Hello friends, welcome to my channel, a channel for learning simple coding. If you find this video to be helpful, please like, share and subscribe my channel. In this video, we are going to learn what is rendering and types of rendering in Next.js. Let us start. First, we understand what is rendering. Generating HTML pages from JavaScript code is called rendering. It's a very simple definition. To generate a HTML code from JavaScript code is called rendering, because at the end on the browser we display HTML, but Next.js is built in JavaScript. So we write code in JavaScript using Next.js. So rendering means to converting the code which we are writing in Next.js into HTML pages at the end is called rendering. Now types of rendering, there are two types of rendering: client-side rendering and server-side rendering. Client-side rendering means the thing that's supported by the React.js. So if you use React, then React use client-side rendering. Client-side rendering means your JavaScript code execute by the browser, and at runtime inside a browser HTML page created. Remember that. So there are certain drawbacks in client-side rendering, that it is not best for search engine optimization, because if you are generating a HTML page on a request within a browser, then search engine cannot search what kind of page you are generating. So that is a problem in client-side rendering. And that's why React is okay, but React is not best for search engine optimization. So because of that, we are now going toward Next.js. So Next.js supports server-side rendering. Remember that. And server-side rendering, the support by the Next.js is called pre-rendering. Remember that. Next.js support pre-rendering. Here we need to understand that there are three types of server-side rendering: static rendering, or we can say static site generation; dynamic rendering, we can also say server-side rendering; and incremental site regeneration, that is ISR. So there are three types of server-side rendering supported in Next.js. So what is the difference in these three that we are going to understand? So now what is pre-rendering? Pre-rendering refer to the process of generating HTML page at build time or on the server. Remember that we are generating HTML page at build time or on the server when user request. So before user request, we are generating the HTML page, that is called pre-rendering. By default, Next.js pre-render every pages. Remember that by default, Next.js support pre-rendering for each and every page. That's why here I have mentioned server-side rendering of pre-rendering type supported by the Next.js. Now types of pre-rendering in Next.js: 13 and Blue. Before the 13 version of Next.js, they called this pre-rendering static site generation, server-side rendering, and incremental static regeneration. So there are three types of rendering before version 13 of Next.js. Now types of pre-rendering in greater than Next.js 13 version, that means now in 14 version or 13 version or the later version, they are supporting three types of rendering. So static site generation now called static rendering. Remember that static rendering right now, but before it was static site generation. So static site generation now we called static rendering in Next.js 13 and above, means in Next.js 14 we called it static rendering. Server side rendering now we called dynamic rendering. So dynamic rendering is the latest one, the new name of server side rendering. Then incremental static regeneration is same, we called ISR in older version, same we called in new version also. Now we have to understand the difference between static site generation, server side rendering, and incremental static regeneration. Static site generation means at build time all the pages will be converted into HTML. Remember that. All the pages means those are possible to convert, not because each and every page cannot be converted into HTML page, but those are eligible to be converted. So they convert those pages at build time. So when you generate a final build version of your application, then all the page convert by the Next.js into HTML page. That is called static site generation or static rendering. Now server side rendering means when user make a request, then the page is converted into HTML. So this is done only at request time. So when user make a request, on that time request goes to server side, and at server they convert the JavaScript code into HTML code. That is called dynamic rendering. We also called server side rendering in older version, but now we call dynamic rendering. So in this processing, search engine optimization is not optimum, because in static rendering case search engine work best because all the pages converted at the build time, but now we are requesting at runtime. That's why it is not, can say, optimized for search engine, but it is best also and better than your client side rendering. Now incremental static regeneration means we combine both static side generation and server side rendering. Means at the build time we generate some pages, those are possible to be converted into HTML, and we have a certain time. After that certain time, again the build process will start and rendering process will start. Means suppose I say on every 2 minutes we should update the pages, because maybe after 2 minutes or 3 minutes your database is updating, and on the basis of database information is changing, you have to update your pages. So we can use incremental static generation. That is the combination of both. Means at build time they generate the pages, but on runtime after certain time, those you fix on that time, after completion of time, suppose I say 60 second, so after each and every 60 second then the page will re-render. Remember that all the pages will re-render dynamically. In case of incremental static generation, it's a combination of both static rendering and dynamic rendering. After certain time we re-generate the HTML pages in incremental static regeneration. So these are 3 types of rendering in Next.js 14. Now in static site generation in Next.js 12 version, less than 12 version, 12 or 12 version, then we use function get static props and get static path. Remember that these two functions right now you can't use in app routing. These were working in page routing of Next.js, that the version of 12 version, but in 13 version it was removed, and we have a new way to achieve static site generation. And in 13 version they tested like a beta version, but in 14 version we have a final changes that we called static rendering, and these two methods are not working in app routing. These are working in page routing. Remember that. Now static rendering, which we called in Next.js 14 version, because it was a 12 and less than 12 version, and from the 13 version we can use static rendering, that is the new name of static site generation. And for that we use fetch function, and within a fetch function we provide some special properties like cache, force cache. If we provide, then means it is static site rendering, and with that we have to use generate static param if we are dynamically generating a page by using route param, then we use generate static param also. In older version we call server side rendering, and for that we use get server side props function, but this function is not working in app routing version 14 of Next.js. And remember that now we call dynamic rendering in Next.js 14, and we use fetch function for doing that, and in property we use no store. In front of cache we give property no store. No store means we do not want to cache anything. If we are not caching anything, that means we are rendering it from the server side, because cache always possible on client side or static side on browser. So if we say this property force cache, that means it's a static side generation, and if we say no store, that means it's a dynamic rendering, we call server side rendering. Now incremental static regeneration in 14 version, and we use this next revalidate x, or we can use export const revalidate equal to this. Some information we can put. 0 means 0 second and 60 means 60 second. So we can specify the time in place of 0 or in place of x, and after certain time it will regenerate the HTML page. So with the help of this we can do static site generation or ISR. This is all about the basic fundamental knowledge about rendering in Next.js. From the next video we will do practical also on all the renderings. In the next video I will show you how to do static site generation or static rendering programmatically in Next.js 14 and above version. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video.